upside down when the man who had the most accurate statistics in college football history, I'm talking about Shedeur Sanders, the Cleveland Browns, should have been first round pick that they allowed to slide to the fifth round in their you know ongoing the start of their ongoing head games with him. Shedeur Sanders set that record, and yet they pick a guy who has in his NFL record no track record of throwing more touchdowns than interceptions. I'm talking about Bailey Zappi. You say, who? Bailey Zappi. I want you to look at this, okay? This is Bailey Zappi, folks, all right? And I'm not making comments about his appearance or anything like that. I'm simply pointing out one thing. Just one thing, okay? His statistics for the his career his career are these. He hasn't played a regular season game yet, but his career, he has 208 completions, 335 attempts, just 62.1%, 2,223 yards, 6.6 yard average, 12 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, longest gain 53 yards, rating 76. This is the guy that Kevin Stefanski has picked as his number two behind Dylan Gabriel, behind Shedeur Sanders, who, while he has no regular season statistics because he hasn't started in a game or played in one, okay, does have a great preseason record. Even when that, if you consider that situation in the third game where he was put in with an offensive line that consisted of scrubs, an offensive line such that four of the five players that came in to block for Shedeur during that fourth quarter were immediately cut by the Browns the next week. Whoosh, gone. Okay? That situation was tailor made to cause Shedeur Sanders to look bad. Nothing else. The plays that were called, no runs, nothing. They didn't give Shedeur Sanders the same type of ball control passes to run that they gave Dylan Gabriel. They basically set it up to make Dylan Gabriel look bad as much as they could, in spite of the fact that Dylan Gabriel threw interceptions where Shedeur Sanders had not. And so here we come into this preseason game in London, his first game, Sanders. And one thing became clear that should have been clear to anybody watching football during the preseason. It certainly was to me. And that is that while Shedeur Sanders can complete short passes, when the ball has to go further than 12 yards, there's a problem. He generally throws behind, or he lets it sail, goes too far, and in total, he's off target. So you're going to tell me that Bailey Zappi is going to do better? No. Bailey Zappi is not going to do any better at all. Bailey Zappi's track record is such that he's not going to do better. You have to ask what the heck is going on, because the Browns had Jameis Winston last year. They brought him in because, well, first, they messed around with him, okay? First, they brought in Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who clearly does not have the passing acumen that Jameis Winston has. They let Jameis sit down, all right? Then they were forced to bring him in, and they did. And Jameis immediately gave them hope. so quickly that Brown's marketing made Jameis Winston the face of the Browns. I mean, they locked him in like that because Jameis has that incandescent je ne sais quoi, that light him up personality where people gravitate toward him. He's been that way for his entire public life. All right. But it became too much for somebody in Cleveland to deal with. And so when he threw 3 interceptions in a very questionable game, but one that still caused Jameis to set records because the offensive coordinator tried to basically burnish his meager, very meager, extremely meager resume with the idea that if I can get Jameis Winston to just throw deep and pile up yards and not too many throw too many interceptions, I'll come out looking really good. But if he does throw what the coach and the public thinks are too many interceptions, I'll just say, well, we've got to work on his problem. He's got a problem. As opposed to the fact, which is those plays that Jameis ran were not plays that Jameis drew up. They were plays that Josh drew up. All right. And he comes from this air raid style of approach and thinks that this undisciplined, not ball control form of passing is the only way to go, when in point of fact, it's not. In point of fact, Bill Walsh showed the way with ball control passing. And so it's sad. It's sad that there was a situation where he was allowed to build this offense. He was widely regarded as the offensive. Well, some people thought he was a guru. I didn't. I would never let that come off my mouth if I were talking about what he had done in putting together his offense. Okay, what he did was just absolutely sickening. It was malpractice in its finest way. There's no other way to put it. Just complete malpractice. All right. And I don't know what he was thinking at all to this day. I really don't. Why he would do that. Jameis Winston praised his time in Florida as a Florida quarterback, and he set records at Florida in college, playing the style of offense that I'm talking to you about. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you take that same system and decide, well, guess what? I'm gonna just replicate what I learned in college and go on from there. Was it Florida or Miami? Actually, I'm saying it wasn't Florida. It was Miami. I said Florida. No, he played for the Miami Hurricanes, and he was the record setter there. He played for the Miami Hurricanes, and so he didn't understand that you have to vary the types of throws that you make. For example, remember the Broncos game where if Ken Dorsey had done, the offensive coordinator, what I assert he should have done in terms of using Bill Walsh passing principles, Jameis Winston would have had 6 touchdown passes against the Browns. 6, okay? Which means that the passing games had to would have to be designed differently. For example, remember that pick six that Jameis threw? Well, it came because Jameis was asked to throw. This is the way the play was designed. A short out from a long distance from the opposite hash without a hitch step. A hitch step is where you step into a throw. Why do you do that? Because you're trying to establish, power and speed of the ball to the target. I am not in favor of throwing that kind of pass anyway, because if you're throwing it from the opposite hash for just 5 yards, and the defensive, and it's man for man, you're asking for the defensive back. You have to be really, 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 really accurate and quick and fast and early with your throw. Because if you don't, playing man for man, the defensive back will come in and intercept it. That's not the pass to throw. You're better off throwing a hook down the middle to the tight end on a stick route than that. And if you're saying Lazzini, they want to stop the clock or you march down the field, well, okay, there are better ways to do it than throwing that pass. I have never been in favor of it because, and if you're going to throw it, have your receiver run a true stem, where the cornerback has no idea whether the receiver is going to turn in or out, and then it turns out, and the throw should be thrown early before the receiver cuts. Jameis didn't do that. And Jameis didn't do that not just because it was a bad throw on his part, but the whole play wasn't timed out properly. He was taking more drops than was necessary to get the ball out early to throw that kind of pass. That's the fault of the offensive coordinator. That was Ken Dorsey's fault. That's why I ultimately said, hey, Ken Dorsey should be fired. And they did fire him. What I don't like about the way the Browns handle their quarterbacks is they take their quarterbacks to make political statements. If you don't want somebody black to succeed, you put him in a situation that doesn't really look good for him. If you have some contractual issue with your African American quarterback who got into legal trouble, then you don't use his situation to hold all other quarterbacks hostage to bad contracts in bad situations, saying, well, we're going to get him back at some point. Maybe you need to cut him loose. I'm talking about Deshaun Watson as much as it pains me. Deshaun didn't do what he was accused of doing. The Browns know it. I know it. The NFL knows it. All right? Tony Busby engineered that class action lawsuit. So they were standing behind Deshaun. But Deshaun got injured. And he's still rehabbing in luxury. So my point is, you can't run an organization successfully and wait for him. You're going to have to cut him loose and build your team around a quarterback you know is going to deliver when he comes in. The Browns haven't done that. The Browns could have done that with Jameis. When it was clear that Watson was going down, when it was clear that Dorian Thompson-Robinson wasn't the answer, and anyone who knows football knows nothing against the former UCLA signal caller, but he needs to be in a very specialized, run-oriented, dual-threat, 3 running back offense. He's not a guy that can carry you if you're asking him to pass for more than 15 times a game in the NFL. College is a different story. The NFL, no. Browns clearly were not willing to do that. But if you're going to go with and say we like Jameis, well, fine, use the classic Bill Walsh system. So the Browns never worked on coaching their quarterbacks to passing efficiency, never worked on making Jameis a better quarterback when they had them in play, just willing to just toss him out and try somebody else. That's Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski does not like to coach quarterbacks. This goes all the way back to Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had the same ugly windup that Geno Smith has today, which caused Baker Mayfield to do what? Throw interceptions. Did Kevin ever correct it? No. Kevin Stefanski had what? One good year, and that was it. That was it. And then he got lucky with Joe Flacco a few years ago, thought he could recreate lightning in a bottle, apparently not choosing to realize that Joe Flacco is older, and by his own admission when he was with the Colts, ran out of breath after hightailing it 21 yards to pick up a first down, and was so trying to catch his breathing back that he admitted to the press that he had a hard time belting out plays, like Brown left, X opposite ship, so on, for the rest of the contest. And this is the man the Browns worked to get, and Andrew Berry worked to get in their house. All right, this is the man. All right, this is the man. Okay? I'm not ready to go after Andrew Berry because I think Andrew Berry had a great draft overall. But I am ready to say Kevin Stefanski should be fired. I have seen enough. I have held out hope that he would get better. He's not. I have held out hope that he would realize that you really have to coach your quarterbacks and get down deep with them and get into the minutia and techniques of what they're doing. He doesn't do that. He's a great guy for the community, Coach Stefanski. He seems to be a fantastic family man, but he is not delivering the Browns wins at the starting with the quarterback position. And this is a time when he can do it because the Browns defense is number one in the league. If you're number one in the league, okay, you should have the record to show for it defensively. They don't. They don't have it. All right? And they're not willing to do what's right. You got Shedeur sitting there who doesn't have Dylan Gabriel's problem of what happens to the football beyond, 12 yards, 12 to 13 yards. Shedeur Sanders will deliver with zip. Shedeur Sanders will deliver on the run. Shedeur Sanders will be effective. The reason why the Browns lost the game against the Vikings, a game that they should have won, was because when it mattered the most, they could not push the ball downfield to get first downs and play keep away for an obviously desperate Vikings team overseas in Ireland. They couldn't do it. Could not do it. And yet they turned around and they let Joe Flacco go to the Bengals, which says two things. It says, the first thing it says is, hey, we made a mistake. The second thing is it says, we don't think he's good enough for us to even have to worry about. Wow. And he's in our division. Wow. You know what I mean? Wow. That's what it says. I mean, that's like, can you be any more obvious that the guy you brought in, you realize just isn't the guy? They clearly made that statement. This is not the guy. And so they believe, hey, look, when he plays us, no problem. No problem. Not at all. And it seems like Joe got into a situation where maybe he, behind the scenes, got upset with Kevin over benching him and not giving him a chance. And maybe Flacco said the wrong thing. And then they thought, okay, fine. This isn't going to work. We're going to let you go. But they let him go to Cincinnati and the Bengals. Now, do I believe that Joe Flacco is good enough to hurt them in that situation? No, I don't. But you mean to tell me that they're going to get back at him with Dylan Gabriel and Bailey Zappi and leave Shedeur Sanders on the bench? I mean, if that's not stuck on stupid, or if that's not an example of stuck on stupid, I don't know what is. But it is, folks. It is an example of stuck on stupid. You know it's bad when Bruce Arians, Super Bowl champion coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, formerly, now retired, says on the Pat McAfee show that he doesn't know how Kevin Stefanski still has a job. I know because he has a great relationship with the owner who wants to give him a chance. But Jimmy Haslam really has to cut bait on fishing for wins as long as Kevin Stefanski's at the helm of the Browns. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. You can look at it like upside down, sideways, weirdly angles and everything else. Okay. And it doesn't matter how you look at the globe. It's still a globe. It's not going to change. The shape of it's not going to change. The outcome's not going to change. There's no reason to think that things are going to get better the way Kevin Stefanski is handling this. At all. I thought he should have been fired again last year, given the way he handled Jameis Winston. You had the chosen one in the room. He was the head QB. You had him as head QB. Everyone admired his heart. Everyone was rooting for him. He had the town in his hands. And now you have the chance to have him with a much improved defense, not using the wide 9 formation as much at all. Thank God. I mean, the Browns were using wide 9 sets like they were going out of style. Also, it's almost like they were tanking the season. That's what it looked like to me and a lot of other people. They were just tanking the season by using the same defense they knew didn't work well. Or they were getting in position in the draft to get the quarterback they really wanted. That didn't happen. They could have had the quarterback they needed in Shedeur, but they screwed around with him. So what? He has an attitude. So did Johnny Manziel. So what? He's confident. That's what you want in a quarterback. I think anybody in this day and age who believes that a quarterback shouldn't be confident is themselves not confident in their own abilities and doesn't want to see anybody reflected out there that may look like them that's superbly confident and possessing of a giant ego. I want my quarterback to have a giant ego. I want my quarterback to be confident. Don Meredith said it best. Dandy Don, the late great quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, the first late great quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, number 17, said it best. He said, "You better believe you're the best damn guy out there if you're going to do it." And then when he was referring to somebody else and how they were bragging, he said, "It ain't bragging if you can do it." Love Don Meredith. He eventually became famous foot announcer on Monday Night Football during its first glory years. It's had a number of them, right? That was Dandy Don Meredith, Dallas Cowboys quarterback. Okay? It ain't bragging if you can do it. I like that. I like people who have big egos, who love other people who have big egos. We need more of that in this country. Because having big egos is the lifeblood of American business culture. All right, it fuels it is the fuel that energizes the lifeblood of American business culture. The belief that you can start a business, make a go of it, make that sale, score that touchdown, pick up that first down over somebody else. Because after all, we are talking about American business. All right? So you want your quarterbacks confident. Okay? You want them to say that they're the best. You want them to argue with the coach. Bo Nix could do it with Sean Payton. Nobody got upset on the press. All right? Okay? Because Bo feels, you know what? I'm out there running the play. You're not. I know what I see. You're not asking. You're not listening to me. You're being bullheaded. And I got to let you know it. Okay, fine. Sean Payton is secure enough to understand that. All right? Look at John Gruden and Rich Gann. John Gruden and Rich Gann used to have some huge arguments on the sidelines. Huge. Okay? Happens. It happens. Happens. It got them to the Super Bowl, I know that. Well, excuse me, it didn't. It didn't get them the Super Bowl. It got them nearly to the Super Bowl. Nearly to the Super Bowl. All right? But Kevin Stefanski is too quick to pull the trigger on quarterbacks. Too quick. You can't develop a winning team with a person doing that. He sees quarterbacks as appliances on a shelf at Sears. Yeah, I said it just like that. Because I know some of you are saying, ooh, what? I'm saying shelf, then you go and you put them back, okay? That was strange. So, and it's the fall. Something out there fell. At any rate, Cameron Stefanski needs to be shown the door. Who should be the interim coach? I think it should be Jim Schwartz, who's the current defensive coordinator. So I think the question would be, if I go through the coaching roster, how should that look? Cleveland Browns. Let me see here. I'm going Cleveland Browns. Coaching staff. Coaches. Okay, so we have the coaching roster. There's except cat cookies. And let's see here. Okay, Jim Schwartz. I said that. So the assistant head coach in special teams is Bobby Ventrone. Okay, so in the hierarchy of things, it should be Bubba Ventrone. That's the head coach, because right now he's assistant head coach. So the Browns' next head coach, their interim head coach, would be a guy named Bubba. Why does that sound like it's so Cleveland? At any rate, I'm pretty certain Bubba will do a better job than Kevin's doing right now. Quite certain. But a change has to be made, because right now, Kevin Stefanski's not handling it right. And don't tell me they got a tank for Arch Manning, because I don't know if you've gotten the 411 on Arch Manning. But Texas wants to call a 911 because they didn't get the quarterback they thought they had. Told ya. So don't tell me they're tanking to wait for Arch Manning. I don't think you're drinking something. Forget it. All right, folks, subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark NFL News by Zenny62.com. We'll see you.